What would you do if you woke up one morning and discovered your father had gambled away your entire future to a man who makes business rivals disappear? For Aria Chen, a 24-year-old nurse barely keeping her world together, this nightmare became reality the moment Damien Volkov walked into her life. He's dangerous, ruthless, the kind of man who wears $1,000 suits like armor and controls half of Seoul's underground economy with a single phone call. When Aria's father's debts land her at Damien's mercy, she expects cruelty, maybe even violence. What she doesn't expect is the contract, 1 year as his companion, attending galas and playing the role of the woman who makes the cold-hearted billionaire seem human. But here's the thing about Damien Volkov, he's not just dangerous because of his power. He's dangerous because beneath that icy exterior, Aria keeps glimpsing something else. Something broken. Something human. The way he finds her reading in his library at midnight and, for the first time, lets his guard down. The unexpected compliment after she describes a sculpture as something that's forgotten what freedom looks like, and the way his eyes linger on her face when he thinks she isn't watching. The ghost of vulnerability when he mentions childhood nightmares about the violence he witnessed at 8 years old. Aria tells herself it's all manipulation. That a man who survives poison attempts and moves money for criminals doesn't have a real heart to give. She's counting down the days, 365 of them, until she can return to her normal life and forget this gilded cage ever existed. But what happens when the cage starts feeling less like a prison and more like the only place where someone truly sees her? When the man who bought her time is the same man who notices how she sees art, who calls her real in a world of beautiful performances, who makes her feel things she absolutely should not be feeling. This is the story of a nurse who sold a year of her life to save her brother, and the dangerous man who might just steal her heart in the process. Because some debts can't be measured in money, and some contracts get written on your soul. Welcome to episode 2 of Sold to the Mafia Lord as Payment, but she made him obsessed with her. If you're ready to watch Aria's carefully built walls start to crumble, hit that like button, subscribe for the next episode, and drop a comment, Team Damien or Team Aria. Let's dive in, ***.
Aria stood frozen in front of the full-length mirror, barely recognizing herself. The emerald silk gown hugged every curve before flowing to the floor in elegant waves. Her hair had been styled into soft curls by a professional who'd arrived at 5 p.m. Makeup that looked natural but had taken 40 minutes to apply made her eyes seem larger, her lips fuller. Diamond earrings, borrowed, she'd been told, sparkled at her ears. She looked like someone who belonged in Damien Volkov's world. She felt like a fraud. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Katia entered without waiting for permission, her critical gaze sweeping over Aria from head to toe.
Good.
You clean up well, Katia said, circling her like a shark. Remember what I told you.
Smile.
Be pleasant. Speak only when directly addressed. You're there to look beautiful and make my brother appear more human. Nothing else. Make him appear more human, Aria repeated flatly. Is he not human? Katia's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Aria had seen from her. That's what people wonder. Your job is to make them stop wondering.
Come.
He's waiting. If you're just joining us, welcome back to Sold to the Mafia Lord as Payment, but she made him obsessed with her. Last episode, we saw how nurse Aria Chen was forced into a year-long arrangement with the mysterious Damien Volkov to pay off her father's debts. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, the link is in the description. Go catch up because tonight, everything changes. And if you're already hooked, smash that like button, subscribe for the next episode, and drop a comment telling me what you think of Damien so far. Is he a villain or just misunderstood? Let's find out together. Damien waited in the foyer, checking his watch. He wore a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been sewn directly onto his body, which, Aria realized, it probably had been. When he looked up and saw her descending the staircase, something flickered across his face, too quickly to read. You'll do, he said simply. Let's go. Not a compliment, Aria noted. Just an assessment. She was acceptable inventory. The car ride to the charity gala was silent except for the low hum of classical music. Aria sat as far from Damien as the back seat allowed, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Through the tinted windows, she watched Seoul's glittering skyline pass by, each light representing someone living their normal life. Someone free. "You're nervous," Damien observed without looking at her.
"I've terrified. Aria corrected."
"I've never been to anything like this." "Then let me make it simple. Stay by my side. Smile when people talk to you. If anyone asks personal questions, deflect. You're a private nurse I've hired. Nothing more needs to be said." "What if someone recognizes me from the hospital?" "They won't. The people at this gala don't frequent public hospitals." His tone was matter-of-fact, not cruel, but the class division it revealed stung nonetheless. The gala was held at one of us most exclusive hotels, the kind Aria had only seen in magazines. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, servers in white gloves carrying champagne on silver trays. Women dripped in jewels that could fund a small hospital. Men wore power like cologne. Damien's hand settled at the small of her back as they entered, possessive, proprietary. Aria forced herself not to flinch. Damien, a portly man in his 50s, approached, arms spread wide. "Finally, you grace us with your presence. And who is this lovely creature?" "Kim Sangwoo, this is Miss Chen. She's assisting me with some private medical matters." Damien's voice was smooth, giving away nothing. "Medical matters?" Sangwoo's eyes raked over Aria in a way that made her skin crawl. "She doesn't look like any nurse I've ever seen." "That's because you go to the wrong hospitals," Aria said sweetly before she could stop herself. Sangwoo blinked, then laughed, a booming sound that drew attention. "Spirit. I like that. Damien, where have you been hiding this one?" Damien's hand tightened slightly at her back, a warning. "If you'll excuse us, Sangwoo, I see some people I need to speak with." He guided Aria away, his grip firm. "What did I say about speaking only when addressed?" he murmured near her ear. He was being disrespectful. He's always disrespectful. That doesn't mean you respond. Damien stopped at a quieter corner, turning to face her. "These people are sharks, Miss Chen. They smell blood in the water and circle. Don't give them anything to bite." "Then maybe you shouldn't bring me to shark-infested waters." Something almost like amusement crossed his face. "Where's the fun in that?" The evening progressed in a blur of introductions Aria wouldn't remember and conversations she wasn't part of. She stood beside Damien like an ornament, smiling until her face hurt, watching him navigate social politics with the precision of a surgeon. He was different here, warmer, more charming, laughing at jokes that probably weren't funny. It was a performance, she realized, just like her presence beside him. During dinner, Aria was seated next to a woman named Yuki Park, a gallery owner who seemed genuinely kind. "First time at one of these?" Yuki asked quietly while Damien was engaged in conversation with a man on his other side. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who remembers her first gala. I spent the entire evening terrified I'd use the wrong fork." Yuki smiled. "Don't worry. After a while, you realize it's all theater. Everyone playing parts." "What part are you playing?" "The successful independent woman who definitely didn't inherit everything from her father." Yuki's smile turned wry. "And you're playing the mysterious woman who's captured Damien Volkov's attention. That's a role many have auditioned for and none have won." Aria glanced at Damien, who was deep in discussion about real estate markets. "I'm just his nurse." "Darling, Damien Volkov doesn't hire nurses who look like you to check his blood pressure. Whatever story you're telling yourself, the rest of us see something different." Yuki leaned closer. "Word of advice? Be careful. Damien is complicated. He seems cold, but that's because he has to be. This world doesn't reward softness." Before Aria could respond, the man across the table, a CEO whose name she'd already forgotten, addressed Damien. "I heard you had some trouble last month. Business rivals getting aggressive." Damien's expression didn't change, but Aria felt him tense beside her. "Nothing I couldn't handle. Still, having someone try to poison you at a business meeting?" The CEO shook his head. That's bold. Or desperate. Aria's fork clattered against her plate. Everyone looked at her. Sorry, she mumbled. Clumsy. But her mind was racing. Poison? Was that the kind of world Damien lived in? Where business rivals tried to kill you over deals? The rest of dinner passed in a haze. Aria barely tasted the food, her stomach churning with new understanding. This wasn't just about money or power. This was about survival. Damien's perfect control, his cold demeanor, they weren't character flaws. They were armor. After dinner, there was dancing. Aria had hoped to avoid it, but Damien offered his hand. I don't know how to dance, she admitted. Then learn quickly. People are watching. His hand was warm at her waist as he guided her onto the floor. Aria stumbled initially, but Damien's lead was firm enough that she could follow without thinking. You're full of surprises, Miss Chen, he said as they moved to the waltz. That comment to Sangwoo, the fork dropping at exactly the right moment. Tell me, was that genuine clumsiness or were you eavesdropping on our conversation? I wasn't. Aria started, then stopped. There was no point lying. Someone tried to poison you? Occupational hazard. That's not normal. That's not safe. No one promised you safe. I promised you a way to clear your debt. Damien's eyes met hers. Having second thoughts? Aria wanted to say yes, wanted to run from this ballroom and never look back. But then she thought of Ethan, safe in his bed, dreaming about scholarships and normal teenage things. No, she said quietly. No second thoughts. Good. Something in his expression softened. Just for a moment. For what it's worth, the person who tried was dealt with. It won't happen again. You can't promise that.
No.
But I can promise I'm very good at staying alive. The dance ended. Damien escorted her back to their table, where dessert and coffee waited. Aria sipped water, her mind spinning. This world was more dangerous than she'd realized. And she was trapped in it for 11 more months. Around 11 p.m., Damien signaled it was time to leave. They said their goodbyes. Yuki squeezed Aria's hand and whispered, "Be careful," and headed for the car. In the back seat, Aria finally let her shoulders drop, exhaustion washing over her. How do you do this multiple times a week? Practice. And motivation. Damien loosened his bow tie. You did well tonight. Better than expected. I stood there and smiled like a trained seal. You represented yourself with dignity while navigating a world completely foreign to you. That's not nothing. He paused. Though the comment to Sangwoo was unnecessary. He's crude, but he's also connected to half the construction contracts in Seoul. We need him. You need him. I don't need anyone who looks at me like I'm something to consume. Then you're in for a difficult year, because many men will look at you that way. Damien's tone was pragmatic, not cruel. That's not your fault. But it's reality. Learn to handle it without creating scenes. Aria bit back a sharp retort. He was right, and she hated it. Back at the estate, Aria headed immediately for her room. Her feet ached from the heels, her face hurt from smiling, and her soul felt bruised from pretending everything was fine. She'd just unzipped the dress when there was a knock. Yes, she called out. It's Katia. May I come in? Aria quickly pulled on a robe. Yes. Katia entered carrying a tray with tea and what looked like pain medication. First gala is always exhausting. This will help. Thank you. Aria accepted the tea, surprised by the kindness. Katia sat in the chair by the window, watching her. You handled tonight well. Damien was pleased. He has a funny way of showing it. My brother doesn't know how to show approval. Our father didn't believe in positive reinforcement. Only criticism when you failed. Katia's expression was unreadable, but I've known him 34 years. He was pleased. Trust me. Aria sipped her tea, studying Damien's sister. Can I ask you something? You can ask. I may not answer. Why does he need me? Really? I'm not stupid. A man like Damien Volkov could hire anyone. Could have anyone. Why go through all this trouble for a nurse who clearly doesn't want to be here? Katia was silent for so long Aria thought she wouldn't answer. Then she stood, moved to the window, looking out at the darkened gardens. My brother is very good at reading people, at seeing what they're capable of. When your father came to us with his debts and his stories, Damien investigated.
He found you.
24 years old, working yourself to exhaustion, raising a teenage boy alone, and still graduating top of your class. Still finding time to volunteer at free clinics. Still saving lives when most people your age are figuring out which bar to drink at. That doesn't explain why I'm here. He needs someone real. Katia turned to face her. Everyone in Damien's life wants something. Power, money, connections. They smile and bow and tell him what he wants to hear.
But you?
You don't want to be here. You're here because you love your brother enough to sacrifice yourself. That kind of loyalty is rare. That kind of genuine emotion is valuable. So, I'm an experiment in authenticity. You're someone who might tell him the truth. In this world, that's rarer than diamonds. Katia moved toward the door. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you start learning about his business interests. The legitimate ones, anyway. She left Aria alone with her thoughts and lukewarm tea. The next morning, Aria woke to sunshine streaming through her windows and the sound of her phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. Breakfast. 8 a.m. Don't be late. K. Aria showered, dressed in comfortable pants and a sweater from her own suitcase, small rebellion against the designer clothes, and made her way downstairs at 7:55. The breakfast room was empty except for Katia, who sat with a laptop and several files spread across the table. Damien's in Tokyo for 2 days, Katia announced. Business that couldn't wait. Which means you're with me. We're going to discuss what you need to know about the Volkov Empire. I thought I was just decorative. You're decorative when you need to be. But Damien wants you educated about what he does. Can't have you accidentally saying something stupid out of ignorance. Katia pushed a file toward her. Start reading. The next several hours were like drinking from a fire hose. Katia walked her through Volkov Industries, the legitimate side of Damien's business empire. Real estate development, luxury hotels, technology investments, pharmaceutical companies. All legal, all profitable, all carefully structured through various holding companies and trusts. And the other side? Aria asked. The side that gets people poisoned at business meetings? That side you don't need to know about. And you definitely don't ask about. Katia's tone brooked no argument. What you need to understand is that Damien operates in a gray area. Not illegal, but not entirely standard. He moves money for people who have complicated financial situations. He facilitates deals between parties who don't want official documentation. He solves problems that can't be solved through normal channels. He launders money. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Katia closed her laptop. You're smarter than you pretend to be.
Yes.
Among other things. But that's not your concern. Your concern is understanding enough about the legitimate businesses to hold basic conversations at events.
Can you do that?
Aria looked at the files, at the numbers and names and complicated corporate structures. I'm a nurse, not a business major. Then you better learn quickly. You have 2 days before Damien returns. I suggest you study. The rest of the day was spent in that breakfast room, Aria reading files and taking notes while Katia answered questions. It was almost like being in school again, except the subject was how her temporary employer made enough money to own an estate like this. By evening, Aria's head throbbed with information. She retreated to her room, desperate for silence and space. A knock interrupted her peace. The maid from her first night entered with a dinner tray. Miss Chen, your meal. Thank you. Aria accepted the tray, then asked on impulse, Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer. The maid hesitated. What? What's it like working here? Really? The maid glanced at the door, then spoke quietly. Mr. Volkov is demanding but fair. He pays well, treats staff with respect as long as we do our jobs. It's not a bad place to work, but it's not a normal place either. You see things, hear things, and you learn quickly not to talk about any of it. Does that bother you? I have 3 children to feed and a sick mother to care for. Mr. Volkov pays for my mother's medical care, my children's school fees. In exchange, I'm discreet about what I see here. That's the trade. She moved toward the door. Same trade you made, isn't it? Except your price was higher. She left before Aria could respond. That night, Aria video called Ethan. Seeing his face on her phone screen made her chest ache. Nuna, how's the fancy house? Have you met any celebrities?
No celebrities.
Just rich people who are boring in expensive ways. She smiled, trying to sound normal. How's school? How's the team? They talked for 30 minutes about normal things, his math test, his friend's birthday party, Mrs. Kim's terrible kimchi. Normal, beautiful, painful things that reminded Aria what she was doing this for. After they hung up, she cried for the first time since arriving. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears for everything she'd lost and couldn't get back. The next day was more studying, more files, more information packed into her exhausted brain. Katia was a ruthless teacher, questioning her constantly, making her repeat information until she had it memorized. Why does this matter? Aria asked in frustration. I'm not running his businesses. You're representing him at events. People will ask questions, try to get information, test your knowledge. You need to be able to hold conversations without revealing anything of substance while appearing knowledgeable. It's an art form. It's exhausting.
Yes.
Welcome to Damien's world. That evening, Aria was given a reprieve. Free time, Katia announced. Explore the house if you want. Just remember the rules. No going into Damien's private office, no leaving the grounds without permission. Aria wandered through the massive house, discovering rooms she hadn't seen before. A library that made her gasp, floor-to-ceiling books, comfortable reading chairs, a fireplace. A music room with a grand piano. A gym that looked like something from a luxury hotel. She found herself in the library, running her fingers along book spines. Many were in Russian, some in Korean, others in English. She pulled out a worn copy of Tolstoy and settled into a chair. That's where Damien found her at midnight. Aria jolted awake at the sound of footsteps, the book sliding off her lap. Damien stood in the doorway, still in his business clothes, looking tired. You're back early, she said, blinking sleep from her eyes. Meeting ended sooner than expected. He moved into the room, loosening his tie. Katia tells me you're a quick study.
I'm motivated.
The sooner I learn, the sooner I can be useful. The sooner I'm useful, the sooner this year ends. Always counting down. Every single day. Damien poured himself a drink from the sidebar, then surprised her by pouring a second and offering it to her. You said you don't drink.
I don't.
Usually. Tonight might be a good night to start. When she hesitated, he added, It's just whiskey, Miss Chen. Not a marriage proposal. Aria accepted the glass, taking a small sip. It burned going down, warmth spreading through her chest. Why are you here? In the library at midnight? I could ask you the same question. I fell asleep reading. What's your excuse? Damien sat in the chair across from her, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him. I come here when I can't sleep. Something about being surrounded by books. He shrugged. Reminds me of simpler times. You had simple times? Once. Long ago. Before my father decided I needed to be groomed for empire building. He sipped his drink, staring into the fireplace's dying embers. I was 8 when I realized my life would never be normal. My father brought me to a business meeting, made me watch while he convinced someone to pay a debt. I had nightmares for weeks. Aria didn't know what to say. This glimpse of vulnerability from the usually controlled Damien was unexpected. Why are you telling me this? Because it's midnight and I'm tired of pretending. He looked at her directly. And because Katia's right. You might be the only person in my life who doesn't want anything from me except for this year to end. That's almost refreshing. I want my freedom. Freedom. Such a simple word for something so complicated. Damien set down his glass. What will you do when this year ends? Go back to your hospital? Pretend this never happened.
Yes.
Exactly that. You think it'll be that easy? To forget. Aria met his gaze. I'll try very hard. They sat in silence, the library quiet except for the ticking of an antique clock. Finally, Damien stood. Get proper sleep. Tomorrow night, another event. Art gallery opening. Less formal than the gala, but just as important. He paused at the door. And Miss Chen? Thank you. For what? For not being what I expected. He left her alone in the library, confused and unsettled by the conversation. Who was Damien Volkov really? The cold businessman? The ruthless operator? Or the man who sought refuge in a library at midnight because he couldn't sleep? The next evening, Aria dressed in a cocktail dress, burgundy silk that Katia had selected, and prepared for the gallery opening. This time, she felt slightly more prepared. She knew what to expect, how to behave, which conversational traps to avoid. The gallery was in Gangnam, sleek and modern. The featured artist created abstract pieces that Aria didn't understand but pretended to appreciate. Damien introduced her to various collectors and critics, his hand possessive at her back. What do you think? Asked an older woman in head-to-toe black. Of the art. Aria studied the canvas, slashes of red against gray. I think it's angry. Like someone trying to express pain they don't have words for. The woman's eyes widened. Exactly. You understand. Most people see only color and dismiss it. After she walked away, Damien murmured, nice save. It wasn't a save. That's genuinely what I see. He guided her toward the next piece. Tell me what you see here. It was a sculpture, twisted metal forming something that might have been a bird or might have been a cage. I see something trying to escape. Or maybe trying to decide if it wants to escape. Like it's forgotten what freedom looks like. Damien was quiet for a long moment. You have an interesting way of seeing the world, Miss Chen. You mean naive? I mean honest. The evening continued, and Aria found herself almost enjoying parts of it. The art was genuinely interesting, some of the guests were kind, and Damien seemed more relaxed here than at the formal gala. During a quiet moment, while Damien discussed a potential purchase with the gallery owner, Yuki Park appeared at Aria's elbow. Told you you'd survive, Yuki said with a smile. You're doing well. Better than most of Damien's previous companions. Previous companions? Oh, he's brought women to events before. Usually models or actresses. Pretty faces who say nothing of substance. They never last more than a few weeks before he gets bored and they disappear. Yuki studied her. But you're different. He actually talks to you. Looks at you like you're a person, not an accessory. That's a low bar. In this world, it's Mount Everest. Yuki squeezed her arm. I'm having a private dinner next week. Small group, good people. Would you like to come? With Damien, of course. Aria glanced at Damien, who was still in deep conversation. I don't think I get to make those decisions. Then I'll invite him properly. But I'd like you there. It's nice to have someone real at these things. After Yuki left, Aria pondered that word.
Real.
What did that mean in this artificial world? Was she more real than the models and actresses? Or just better at pretending? The ride home was quiet. Damien seemed lost in thought, staring out the window at Seoul's nighttime lights. Yuki invited us to dinner, Aria said, breaking the silence. Did she? Interesting. Is that good or bad? With Yuki, it's usually good. She's one of the few people in this world I actually trust. He turned to look at her. You made an impression on her. That's not easy to do. I didn't do anything special.
Exactly.
You were yourself. In a world of performances, authenticity stands out. Back at the estate, Aria headed for her room, but Damien called after her. Miss Chen. A moment. She turned, her heart rate picking up for reasons she didn't want to examine. You did well tonight. Better than well. You're adapting faster than I anticipated. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Your first month's stipend. As agreed in the contract. Aria took the envelope, feeling its weight. More money than she'd made in 3 months of nursing. Blood money.
Debt money.
But money that would help Ethan, keep Mrs. Kim paid, maybe even let her save something for after this year ended. Thank you, she said quietly. It's not a gift. You're earning it. Damien's expression was unreadable. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss medical equipment for the facility I mentioned. I have someone coming next week who'll need attention. The reminder of what else she was here for sent a chill through Aria. What kind of attention? The discreet kind. Katia will brief you. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Miss Chen, I'm glad you're here. Not just for the contract. You're good for this place. It's been a long time since anyone saw the art the way you do. He left her standing there, confused by the unexpected compliment and unsettled by how much it affected her. In her room, Aria opened the envelope. More money than she'd ever held at once. She thought about sending it all to Mrs. Kim for Ethan, but something stopped her. She needed to keep some back. For when this year ended and she had to rebuild her life. If she could rebuild it after this. If living in Damien's world didn't change her too much to go back to who she was before. That night, sleep came in fits and starts. And when she finally dreamed, it was of twisted metal sculptures that might have been cages or might have been something desperate for freedom. She couldn't tell which anymore. Loving this story so far? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe because episode 3 is where everything we think we know about Damien gets turned upside down. What happens when Aria has to make an impossible choice that could save a life, but cost her everything? You won't want to miss it. Drop a comment telling me what you think of Damien and Aria's dynamic. Is he falling for her? Or is she just another pawn? See you in the next episode, and trust me, you're not ready for what's coming.